This week on Dangerous Tides, it's a continuation of the previous episode where we explored the wreck of the SS John B. Cowell. This time, we'll be examining the fate of the ship that had been the cause of the Cowell's sinking, the SS Isaac M. Scott. As anyone with a sailor in the family could tell you, the nautical world is one filled with superstition. Some say that a bad christening can lead to a disaster. And while this may not always be the case, it is just as ominous for a bad maiden voyage to mark the fate of a mighty vessel. Such was the case on one morning of 1913, when a record-breaking storm rocked the Great Lakes and the towns surrounding them. So climb aboard as we explore the SS Isaac M. Scott on Dangerous Tides. The SS Isaac M. Scott was launched on June 12, 1909, at the American Shipbuilding Company's Lorain, Ohio shipyard. Commissioned by the Virginia Steamship Company on July 2nd of that year, the Isaac M. Scott would be named for then president of LaBelle Iron Works, and her launch was a huge public event at the time, with the Toledo Blade considering her one of the handsomest of the large freighters of the Great Lakes. She was 504 feet in length, with a beam of 54 feet and a weight of 6,372 gross registered tons. The freighter had a triple expansion engine that was powered by coal-filtered boilers at 1,760 horsepower and would be assigned to Fairport, Ohio, as her home port. Her nearly identical sister ship, the Charles S. Price, would also sink with her during the Great Lakes storm of 1913. 10 days after her completion, Captain Archie MacArthur would be assigned to her maiden voyage, sending her to Duluth, Minnesota. Captain MacArthur, a Scottish-born resident of Ashtabula, Ohio, was known to be a full steam-ahead captain who often threw caution to the wind, both in the literal and figurative sense. Any form of inclement weather was not a concern for MacArthur, which led to his censure after the sinking of the John B. Cowell for failure to signal an excessive speed. Still, the Virginia Steamship Company and his crew considered him to be a reliable captain and would remain in command of the SS Isaac M. Scott throughout her life until her final voyage. For further details on the disastrous maiden voyage of the Isaac M. Scott, we recommend listening to the previous episode of Dangerous Tides that covers the John B. Cowell. On the evening of Thursday, November 6, 1913, the Isaac M. Scott sailed from Cleveland, making a stop at Ashtabula to take on a load of coal destined again for Duluth, Minnesota. A storm was noticed on the western side of Lake Superior and was quickly moving toward Lake Michigan that night, with the Detroit News predicting it as a moderate to brisk winds with occasional rain for the upper lakes and fair to erratic conditions for the lower lakes. As a precaution, the United States Weather Bureau posted hurricane warnings with white pennants above red and black storm warning flags around their offices. Ignoring these warnings to his own peril, Captain MacArthur took 27 other crewmen aboard the Scott out of the St. Clair River and into the epicenter of it all. After 4 years' experience, he was never one to be intimidated by the threat of stormy weather. Captain MacArthur would make the same decision that and many other lake captains made that day. Just a few miles ahead of him was the SS John A. McGean, destined to be another victim. By midnight on Friday, November 7th, another vessel, the steamer Cornell, would be caught 50 miles west of Whitefish Point in a sudden northerly gale and sustain heavy damage, almost forcing her captain to limp to port. The storm found the day before would consolidate with a string of low-pressure centers from Canada noted as Storm Number 1, with warm air being pushed from the Carolinas and Virginias, with Storm Number 1 moving east to Lake Huron, while strong northern winds developing over Lake Superior on Saturday, the 8th. On Sunday, the 9th, storm number 2 would develop in the same area, with the northern portion of it sweeping warm air over the colder air of Ohio, creating heavy snow and strong winds along Lake Huron, exceeding hurricane force. Around 3:30 that afternoon, Captain A.C. May of the SS H.B. Hawgood reported watching that the Isaac M. Scott as she entered Lake Huron. Captain May was heading southbound and remarked that he thought Captain MacArthur was a fool to leave the river. Captain May would save his own ship and crew by beaching it near Serena's Lake Huron Hotel. His sighting would be the last time anybody would see the Isaac M. Scott afloat. Following the lead of the SS John A. McGean, Captain MacArthur ran the Isaac M. Scott along Michigan's eastern shore to protect her from the deadly northeast winds. Struggling against heavy winds, churning seas, and blinding snow, every one of her crew worked frantically to stoke the engines, man the pumps, and steer the ship on course in hopes that it would sail through to the other side of the storm. What Captain MacArthur didn't anticipate was the gale's sudden change in direction from northwest to northeast, with the unexpected shift creating waves that tossed the freighter from one direction while the winds blasted her from the opposite. As she bucked and heaved, the Isaac M. Scott and her crew fought a desperate but unsuccessful battle for survival. Captain MacArthur had one last chance to save the freighter. A safe option would be to turn his vessel into the relative shelter of Saginaw Bay, where he then could head to the western shore of the Michigan Thumb and ride out the storm at anchor. That sort of caution, however, was not in Captain MacArthur's nature, and so he ordered the Isaac M. Scott to turn into the open lake. Just a few hours more, and the Isaac M. Scott could limp into the Sioux Canal and Sault Ste. Marie and give his exhausted crew much-needed rest. However, MacArthur's decision to head into Lake Huron would both doom his ship and his crew. As every man worked on board feverishly at their station to save the struggling freighter, a grim moment of terror must have seized the Isaac M. Scott's crew as she listed hard to her port side. Giant waves shattered the ship's skylights over the engine room and water poured into the hatches. She stood no chance against the storm. She had listed too far over to recover her balance and foundered. As soon as she keeled over, all 27 men, save for Captain MacArthur, drew their last breaths on board. No order to abandon ship had been given. It would have been a futile attempt, as any lifeboat would have quickly been overwhelmed by the lakes of Huron and the hurricane-force winds of what was considered the worst storm in Great Lakes history. Hypothermia would have taken the lives of anyone immersed in the frigid water of Lake Huron within minutes. A battered lifeboat washing up on the Canadian shore would be the only wreckage announcing the SS Isaac M. Scott's loss. On December 11th, Captain Archie MacArthur's body washed up near Southampton, Ontario, still wearing his life preserver. No other bodies from the Isaac M. Scott were recovered. As a result of the massive loss of life on the Great Lakes, along with extensive damage to cities along the shore, the U.S. Weather Bureau would increase efforts to better weather forecasting and more rapid communication through weatherproofing utility cables after a death from downed power lines. Along with the 28 crew members of the Isaac M. Scott, the total death loss from ships that foundered during the storm resulted in 225 other casualties, totaling up to 253 lives lost on the Great Lakes. The Isaac M. Scott would tie 3 other ships for the greatest loss of life during the storm on the lakes, along with her sister ship, the Charles S. Price, the John A. McGean, and the SS Argus. Still, it is worth telling these stories to remind us that even in the modern era, no human is completely capable of taming the fury of nature. Thanks for joining us today. The episode is dedicated to all the lives of the 28 men lost on the SS Isaac M. Scott as well as the efforts of the researchers, maritime experts, divers, and archaeologists that allow us to continue the tales of these forgotten vessels. If you like what you've heard today, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, may the fair winds guide you through dangerous times.